The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Why We Vote. Why do we vote? I heard John asking Tim Burchett about that today.
Yeah, I mean, we vote so we can give consent to be taxed into oblivion. And then when the people take that all of that taxation and do whatever they want with it, then they can blame the voters. That was the gist that I got from Tim Burchett's answer.
It's kind of the creature from Jekyll Island too, with the banks. They blame people on the economy, and then they bail out the banks, because if the banks fail, we all fail. And so there's a lot of congruence between the creature from Jekyll Island and election integrity.
Yeah, well, you can't have one without the other. You can't have this system continue if you don't have this theater of elections, and elections are theater. I
gotta say, I was okay with Tim Burchett's answer, because I felt like it was an answer that was safe. Well, I felt like it was an answer that was safe. I think that there is fraud in almost every single election, hands down, right? Bar none. I don't think you see like the massive amounts of fraud that we saw in the swing states in 2020 throughout.
How do you know?
You don't. That's the problem. I absolutely agree that you don't know. But like when you get to it, like Broward County, Florida, where I live, huge fraud. But that's because it's a huge budget. There's a huge government here. When you get to, small town, nowhere, where there's 1,000 people voting in an entire municipal election, it's a little more difficult to do the fraud there. I think it still happens. No question. But yeah, I don't know.
The reality is we don't know. The reality is that we know that there is widespread fraud, meaning same sources and methods to defraud the American people across states, using the same vendors, using the same narratives. And because of that, Brian, why would we give even a little bit of belief? Why would, Chris talks about withholding belief, and Chris is advocating to cancel the midterms until we have real elections. And that was when he first said it, I was like, had kind of a immediate response. But the more I think about it, the more that is the truly logical position to hold, that we have, and that we've been doing this show for 3 years. For 3 years, we've been doing Why We Vote. We've done an analysis of election fraud and election systems and election legislation and election lawfare and election corruption and arrests and all of the things. We've done that across states for 3 years. Mm-hmm. We are this Tim Burchett thing really pissed me off. We are now being told that voters are just lazy and it's a turnout issue again. The 2020 election was 94.1% turnout among registered voters. 94.
5 countries with compulsory voting.
Yeah, higher than 5 countries with compulsory voting. And we don't have compulsory voting. So to be told that, you just need to vote harder. We need to Scott Pressler everybody out there and get more people on the rolls. How are we checking eligibility? Well, the state will do that. The government has checks and balances to make sure that the eligibility is taken care of. No, not really.
Well, so again, and maybe I should reiterate my point with Burchett is that he said, and I'm sure he's talking more like his district, where it's a very small district, as opposed to like Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Madison was, or not Madison. What's the other big? Yeah, Madison, Wisconsin, or Detroit, Michigan, or Miami, Florida. You know, the major metropolitans. Is I think in those smaller ones for the local races, I think you can overcome fraud. Is it possible? Like, that's what his point was, and I don't disagree with his point. I'm still a proponent of voting. I think that's what I'm getting at. Obviously, I'll never stop uncovering fraud, especially while we still have black box voting machines and universal mail-in ballot and automatic voter registration. While we still have these things, I will never concede that elections are fair. But that being said, I think there are ways to overcome the cheating. And I think that was Burchett's point. And that's why we had the 94% turnout in 2020.
Okay, that might be your point, but that was not his point.
Well, was his point. That was his point.
His point was apathy among the electorate is the problem that we have. Mm-hmm. And you and I had this debate.
Laziness more than apathy. Laziness.
Run up. He said both. Yeah. In the run up to the 2024 election, we had this conversation about too big to rig. And too big to rig, I believe, as I recall it, I said at the time, is a thing that we're going to do one time.
Yep.
It is a thing. It was 2024. And
no, I think 2016 was too big to rig.
No. You're missing my point. You and I had a conversation before the 2024 election about too big to rig. And I will participate in a too big to rig situation in 2024. It's now 2026, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we know more about how fake elections are than ever before, but we still have to vote, and we still have and we still have to be blamed by the fucking Congress for being the problem. He, in that interview, said that Congress is the problem, right? Straight up said it. Congress is the problem. And then blamed voters for why Congress is so fucked up.
Well, why? No, he blamed voters for why we don't win elections, which is absurd. And to clarify my point, you're right. 2024 was the too big to rig. 2016 was she was never supposed to lose. So I'll concede that one to you. They didn't realize that they had to have all the mechanisms in place for 2016 because all the polling told them 93% that Donald Trump is going to lose 2016. So I'll concede that point, that 2024 was the too big to rig and 2016 was she was never supposed to lose.
So to your point of, I still am an advocate for voting. I'm still going to vote, but I'm never going to stop pointing out election corruption. Is that a forever position for you? No.
I mean, that's as much as we got to do. We got to keep on doing it. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, the way things are going right now, I mean, yeah, we've got a lot of steam at our backs right now. And this has been an epic month or two that we've had in the election integrity movement, but we're not seeing anything put down fundamentally. Like, we're not seeing any significant change of law. The Save America Act, that was the last question we asked Dr. Parikh about last week. What would the Save America Act do? And we can't even get that passed. So I feel like we have the wind at our sails, but we're still stuck on a sandbar.
And we have congressmen who are the most based congressmen, right? The ones we can talk to them about aliens, congressmen blaming voters.
Paying your taxes. I don't think we should be paying our taxes. I mean,
yeah, no, I'm totally on board with you. We shouldn't pay taxes. So why are we then? Because we'll put you in jail.
Yeah.
Because we'll take your freedom away if you don't. This is not a legitimate system, and it all comes down to elections. That's the answer to why we vote, because the legitimacy of the government comes through voting.
Yep,
that's where it comes from. And if voting is a farce, and it's looking more and more like it is, Brian,
just a little bit.
If voting is a farce, then we don't consent to be governed, and that's true of whether or not the people really understand it. Right. It's just a fact that if the outcome is not representative of the will of the people because the process is manipulated, rigged, fake, whatever, then it doesn't actually matter if the people know that. It's still a fact. It's, it matters what we're going to do about it. It's and I, apologize for starting out from a dooming posture, but that interview pissed me off. Like, why are we paying taxes? Well, we'll put you in prison if you don't. Awesome. That seems legitimate. What gives you the authority to do that? Elections. Okay.
All right. Well, let's jump into our sponsors, and then we'll get into the show, and we'll start out with some prison talk.
What up, Badlanders? Are you ready to rock something new in 2026? Well, as always, we got you covered with the Rise Badlands Native Collection. Built from the rich tones and rugged terrain of the Dakotas, equal parts beautiful and brutal. Old roots, new vibe. Whether you got gators in your backyard or you have to take a bush plane to the post office, Badlanders are worldwide. Different dirt, same tribe. Speaking of different dirt, the ghost of base Patrick Henry designed a plan for the border wall that he actually sent to the White House. It's friggin' hilarious. Now you can get it on a shirt, hoodie, and more. And don't forget, every order throws fuel on the fire of the Made in USA parallel economy. So grab something now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
All right, badlandsmedia.tv/rise. I did order after yesterday's show my long sleeve Ghost of Base Patrick Henry moat.
I need one. Oh, I hope they have them in Deadwood. I'll grab one there.
I yesterday I was like, I keep saying I need one so bad, and then I forget after the show to buy it. And I went yesterday. Mags texted me, a couple people DM'd me and messaged me and said, "Here's your reminder." And I said, "Okay."
Give you reminders.
Yeah, they were reminding me after the show. And then I went and did it, and I got all the way to the end and to check out, and it didn't go through, and something happened, and it went all the way back to the beginning, and I'm like, I'm done. I was like, no, got to do it again. So I did it again, and got it through. So
nice.
Ash, would you like to talk about our friend Jordan Sather and Conscious Strength?
Try and stop me. Maha yourself with supplement. Sather in 2019.
You got to start reading again. You said try to stop me, so I stopped you.
Oh. Well,
I'm such an ass.
Yeah. Maha yourself with supplements that don't suck from Conscious Strength. Founded by Badlands' own very own Jordan Sather in 2019, Conscious Strength products are made in America and won't break your bank like other online brands. Their lineup includes collagen for strengthening joints and hair, electrolytes to get rid of those cramps, greens powder that tastes good and mixes easy, Shilajit gummies, methylene blue, zeolite, and more. And on the more, I pitch it every time, the oregano oil. Jordan's oregano oil is fantastic. Everybody should have it in their medicine cabinet. Flip the finger to pharma and be your own doctor and get supplements that you can trust from Conscious Strength. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/strength to shop now and use promo code Badlands for 10% off. One more time, that's badlandsmedia.tv/strength. Link will be in the description below. And check out episode 5 of America First Stories to learn more about Jordan and Conscious Strength.
All right. Yeah, you can't tempt me and say, try to stop me, and then I'm not going to try.
That's fair. That's fair. I should have seen that one.
Then you weren't monitoring yourself, so you didn't realize.
Well, no, because I was looking at the read that I had to read.
I'm such an ass. I apologize, guys. I'm sorry, Jordan. I messed up the ad read.
Never change, CannCon.
I'm sorry. Okay, so we talked about putting you in prison. So Ash, break the big news, man. Not that everybody doesn't already know.
Oh, well, I went and visited Tina Peters in prison. And it was interesting. It was really good. I got to, haven't seen her, like physically seen her since 2023. I've talked to her on the phone. I think I texted with her right before my trial. I tried to text with her before her trial, but she was on a communication blackout and had no responses. And I've spoken to her on the phone a few times from prison in the run up to this weekend. But I've been trying, and I've said a year. I've been trying for a year. I think it might be more like, 8 months, 9 months to get in there and see her for a visit. I have been blocked. I've posted those emails on the internet about, and actually notably after I posted the emails of them saying that I couldn't see her because of media, et cetera, after that is when I was given the green light. So they approved me to go see her. And then we booked a date, May 16th. And that was scheduled for several weeks before before it actually happened. And then the night before it happened, Jared Polis granted her clemency, cut her sentence in half, made her eligible for parole on June 1st, and granted parole effective June 1st, subject to the terms and conditions set by the parole board. So it just so happened that my already scheduled visit with her came right after, 12 hours after she was granted clemency. That was cool. The timing of that was fantastic. I got for the very first discussion with her, got to kind of get her immediate reactions and everything. She is a hot commodity right now in terms of people wanting, because I've even, tried to say, okay, well, you should do this interview first. You should come on Why We Vote, all these things. And, there's this most desired interview out there right now. So I got to hug her, got to look in her eyes, talk to her about a lot of stuff. I spent about 2.5 hours with her. The things that I will share right now are that her first priority is to see her 97-year-old mother. She's very concerned about her mother. Her second priority is to restore her health. She wants to eat real food. She wants a steak, a big, thick, juicy steak with and a salad with real tomatoes and avocados, is what she said. She's concerned about the wear that eating prison food has had on her body. And I had this argument with this radio host here, Peter Boyles, in Colorado on Saturday. And I was talking about the conditions inside of the prison. And he was like, it's jail. It's jail. It's prison. Bad. So like, you're not supposed to be comfortable. You're not supposed to get good food in there. And I always go to the black mold because there have been allegations of black mold in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and specifically down there in the complex of facilities that are in and around where Tina is. The facility that we were at seemed to be very clean, very well maintained, but there have been a lot of allegations, and I've seen some of those documents and things. And so I kept bringing up, just because you're in jail for a non-violent first-time offense doesn't mean that you are condemned to breathe black mold, right? Shouldn't mean that you're condemned to be only fed sodium and sugar and no, nutrients and things that you need to, stay healthy and strong. But there's a lot that's going to come out. She's also concerned about the water. There's a lot that's going to come out about prison, the prison conditions and prison reform. It's a position that she has. It's a cause that she has mentioned every time I've spoken with her since she's been inside, and she had quite a lot to say about it while I met with her. It's not my story to tell, so I'm going to let her tell it when she gets out. But that is something that we can expect to hear more from about her. And then her third priority upon release is to see her dog Minka. People might have seen her Doberman going viral over the past on multiple platforms over the past week or so. She is very excited to see Minka, but she does not want to see Minka until she can be certain that she is not leaving her again.
So a couple things. That would be amazing to get her on Why We Vote. I know there's a few platforms that have been diligently following her case, and we are definitely in the top 3, I would say, for sure. The other thing I would say is, in terms of the prison, and this is something that I thought should have absolutely been a 14th Amendment violation that was brought up in the appellate court, is the fact that there is no minimum security women's prison in all of Colorado, and that they only have a medium security for women. And so, like you said, a first-time offender, nonviolent crime, she is forced to be with people that are, infinitely worse than her in terms of what they did. And so,
yeah.
And as you get more, as you go from a work camp to minimum security to medium security to high security, the conditions can get progressively worse. And so while there is securities like that, facilities like that for the men, there is none for the women. And I think that that's a 14th Amendment violation, equal protection under the law. And then the last part is, I'm half tempted to fly out there when she gets out and make her a badass fillet, because nobody can make a steak like me. So for her first steak, I should get out there and make her one.
Well, there are, we have mutual friends that have, one of whom lives in Colorado and hasn't been back to Colorado in a very long time, who I spoke to last night and is planning to be here. It should be quite the event when she gets out. Don't know what that looks like yet. There are a number of different options for how that's going to work, and I'm not going to go into them because a lot of that is trying to keep her safe as opposed to, maximize exposure and press and everything. So, but there, I did Emerald's show yesterday, and Peter Tickton was on right before me, and she was asking him about, her safety and what the conditions are going to be. He seemed to be pretty laid back about the parole board. That's what we're waiting for right now, is to find out what the terms and conditions set by the parole board are, because they have vast discretion. They have a wide berth when it comes to what they can do. They get to determine, what do we need to make it safe for this person to re-enter the community, and then to impose those things. And they can't be appealed, as I understand it, they can't be appealed, and they can't be overruled by anyone, even including the governor. So we're kind of holding our breath. I think, on the more doomed out side, we're thinking, well, they're going to gag her, they're going to ankle bracelet her, they're going to do, some other shenanigans that restrict her, her natural rights. And she will be on parole, right? She's not just being free. She will be on parole. So there's that, kind of most extreme, what can they do, versus, let her just go live her life. It would probably be the best case scenario. I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. We don't know what it will be yet. The other piece of news on this is that her attorneys are still pursuing the appeal. Two things. One, the appeal of her criminal conviction. So that was at the Colorado Court of Appeals. They upheld the convictions, but vacated the sentence. We talked about that when it happened. They are still appealing that. I believe the next stop there is to the Colorado Supreme Court, that they are appealing that. And then the appeal of the presidential pardon. Same path, both probably headed for the Supreme Court, unless it's, definitively shut down. We'll see what happens.
Does she get to speak during her parole board hearing?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Because I don't, like you see in the movies when they do parole, they always get an opportunity to speak. But in her case, it's kind of like forced by the governor. So I don't know if they're going to afford her that luxury. But, when I look at the way that the sentencing remarks from Judge Barrett compared to any human being with any sort of a soul, I can't imagine they look at her track record, her history, her service, her son's service, her loss and sacrifice and everything else, and don't see that she's not a threat to anybody. She's not a threat to anybody. So,
well, she's a threat to the narrative, Brian. And that is the problem, is that and you can see it in the responses of people like Jenna Griswold and Phil Weiser and Matt Crane. You can see that the narrative is the most important thing. She's the most valuable scalp. In fact, you and I did 3 parts, 7+ hours of content with Alpha Warrior on this case, going through all of the different things. We brought in Sean Smith at points. We brought in Mark Cook at points. And I posted that link. I have it all consolidated into one stream. That's how I ran it on my channel. So I posted that link in the comments of this show, which is pre-recorded. This show is being pre-recorded. And so you guys can find that if you want to see, all of the things surrounding this case. But when you look at the responses from the, what Holly at Altitude called the Colorado elections cabal, the public-private partnership that governs elections, including, obviously CDOS, the Secretary of State's office, and the, Phil Weiser, the Attorney General, and his office, and their collaboration, the Department of Justice. In fact, do you have JD Vance's comments? Oh, okay. We should play that, because the U.S. Department of Justice participated in the persecution of Tina Peters, and JD Vance today was saying that you find it, that she is one of the people who's eligible for the weaponization thing, which is, great.
So is Hunter Biden.
You think Hunter Biden was a victim of weaponization of government?
No, but I think they actually said that. Somebody said that. Somebody came out in the administration and said, yes, to answer your question, Hunter Biden can apply. Doesn't mean he's going to be accepted, but he can apply. I'm telling you that was an interesting comment, especially, when Trump is saying that Hunter was the only person that received a legitimate pardon, the weaponization, everything else. That's an interesting comment.
Getting very strange. Yeah. It is getting very strange. Hold on, let me pull this in. Hold for processing. Okay.
Like, let's just take a couple of examples. Tina Peters is this woman who is about to get out of prison, thanks in large part to the president's good work in Colorado. This is a woman who, at worst, if you believe everything that the prosecutors said about her, committed misdemeanor trespassing, and somebody threw the book at her. This innocent grandmother was going to spend 10 years in prison, completely disproportionate to any misdemeanor trespassing that I've ever seen. Was that fair?
Hold on. Whoa. That's a reframing of the circumstances surrounding this case. We'll just finish it and then we can talk about it.
No. Is it reasonable for her to get some compensation for the fact that she was treated unfairly? I think the answer is yes. And I think that what we're going to see, hopefully, is the entire country, led by this Department of Justice, turning the page on the lawfare. What I admitted.
It's a good tactic. It's interesting to me that, when Trump posts about Tina, he often gets like her age wrong, right? And, certain details wrong. That is used to drive greater division. Like I heard, I forget who it was. Somebody local here was talking about how President Trump does, he doesn't know any. I think it was Jared Polis, actually. President Trump doesn't know anything about this case. He even gets her age wrong when he talks about her. The reality is, as our audience should be well familiar, that everybody lies about Tina Peters. The details of this case are cherry picked and put together into various different narratives. And those narratives largely have been used to justify demonization and atrocities against her, which is unfortunate. But none of that is okay. The truth matters. So when he comes out and he says misdemeanor trespassing, maybe he's saying, and I think this is a lot of grace, but maybe he's saying she should only have been charged with misdemeanor trespassing. The reality is there was no trespassing at all. That was part of this case. She was charged with 3 felonies for 3 counts of attempting to influence a public official, with the objective of obtaining something of value. The thing of value in this case was the knowledge of the trusted build. The story is that she stole passwords, right? I think they've kind of backed off that because you can't prove it. But the story originally in August 2021 at the Cyber Symposium, the story that when we were all at the Cyber Symposium, which is where I met you, the Jenna Griswold was holding press conference back here in Colorado with Matt Crane and talking about how Tina Peters stole and leaked passwords and election deniers are the greatest threat to democracy, et cetera, et cetera. She wasn't charged with that. And just to go to the point, so JD Vance saying misdemeanor trespassing, no, that's not a thing that happened. Also, Jared Polis said that she was illegally obtaining images. So he corrected the record because Caitlin Collins of CNN said that Mike Lindell she gave credentials to Mike Lindell. I don't know if you saw that. Caitlin Collins says, so she says that Tina Peters gave credentials to Mike Lindell so he could take an image of the machine. Jared Polis corrects her and says, no, it wasn't Mike Lindell. It was someone else. And, she was illegally taking these images that she gave access to illegally take images. And so it's like Jared Polis is correcting the record. And I need to correct Jared Polis as he's correcting the record because taking the images was not unlawful. Dallas took images in Elbert County. The unlawful part of this, the only unlawful part of this was the misrepresentation to the Secretary of State and the 3 people, one of whom is in Mesa County. That misrepresentation forms 8 years and 3 months of her sentence. And that misrepresentation was not made to obtain the images. It was made to have access to observe the trusted build. That's what happened. Taking the images was not unlawful. It is now. But in 2021, taking the images of the voting systems was not unlawful. We know that that's true because, one, Dallas did it and didn't have this kind of blowback. He got some negative press, but all they did was seize the images, which we're still wondering where they are.
Yeah, forever.
Like we'd still like to see those, Jenna. We know that you are a good steward of all documents and records. And so we'd really like for you to release the Elbert County images so we can have a look at them. That would be fantastic. But 2, so one, we have another set of images from inside of Colorado. They were seized by the Secretary of State's office. Nothing was ever done to them. The easiest thing in the world would be to have them analyzed side by side and prove, the state's story about Mesa County. But they haven't done that, and it's 2026 now. So that's interesting. The second thing is the second way we know that taking the images was not unlawful is that in 2022 they passed the Colorado Election Security Act, which was Senate Bill 22-153. We did a huge amount of advocacy against that, support and advocacy against that bill for the position that it was a power grab by the Secretary of State. They took statutory powers out of the counties and put them in the hands, centralized them in the hands of the Secretary of State. And they did that largely citing Tina Peters as the cause. In that law, they make taking the images of voting systems unlawful, meaning that's 22, right? 2022 is when that law was passed. Tina Peters' images were taken in 2021. This case, as I've argued many times, was them cobbling together violations of professional codes of conduct. And, there's the public servant felony, which certainly, that was stipulated to. So you can't say that she didn't do that or anything. You can make moral arguments about why it was okay that she did do that. And everybody does that and cites it as though that's something that would be found fact in court. That's not how that works. The reality is that was a statutory violation. She did that. She admitted that she did that. And that forms 8 years and 3 months of the sentence. But the taking of the images, the turning of the cameras off, the things that she did in service of what she did in 2021 was not unlawful conduct, which is why they kind of did this duct tapes and popsicle 6 thing to effectively try her under 22-153. But you can't do that because it wasn't the law at the time. So it was, a bunch of other stuff cobbled together.
Well, and we've made this point before on that long segment we did, but the whole instigation, the whole reason that the criminal investigation into it began was something that they knew was not a crime in the first place.
Yes.
And the leaking of the passwords. And they knew first and foremost that they were redacted passwords. They were partial passwords. They were invalid passwords. They were already changed.
They were not a thing of value.
And they weren't a thing of value. Right. It's no different than any other string of characters that could have been released. No possibility of them being, effective passwords. But also, Tina Peters didn't do that. That was not her that did that.
Right.
And so the whole premise of the investigation was on a false pretense. And, that's another argument that I thought should have been, made a little bit better. But everything that you just outlined that was not in fact a crime, that was what was put out in the media in order to make Tina Peters the worst possible person. She stole someone's identification in order to do this. Well, that wasn't the crime. She wasn't charged with.
She was charged with identity theft. She was acquitted.
Right. She was acquitted. And they knew that she didn't steal it because we found out that during the trial that there was exculpatory evidence that was not given to DA Rubinstein.
Yeah, I think that the state has, so potentially the state has plausible deniability on this thing.
I agree.
That was information that wasn't given to the state by Tina Peters' team. They didn't have to give it to the state because it was information, it was evidence that was going to be used to impeach the witness.
Well, hang on. That shouldn't have been given to them by the team. That should have been given to them by the FBI. DA Rubinstein said that he got those text messages and those communications from the FBI, which means the FBI withheld that from Rubinstein.
If you believe Dan Rubinstein.
He was under oath.
Well,
I mean, he said this on the
they
witness.
Never lie. They never lie when they're under oath.
Again, you can't. You have to presume honesty while he's testifying under oath.
No, I don't have to presume honesty from the people that put together this show trial.
But that should have been an investigation, Ash. That's my point. That is a Brady violation.
All of this stuff should have been an investigation. We're talking about the state of Colorado, though, Brian. And there's so much to criticize about this, but the reality is that it was not a crime to do what she did when she did it. They made it a crime after she did what she did. That was one of the greatest things of value that they got out of the Tina Peters case and the crucible that they put her through, is that they got the premise to call all of us, dangerous threats to democracy, to shut down any inquiry into elections because it's dangerous, because it will lead for, if you start questioning the outcome of elections, then the whole thing falls apart. And we're all, I don't know where you're at, but I'm like, yeah, Like,
Well,
yeah,
and-
yeah, it does actually. And you know what? The truth can withstand such scrutiny, but lies can't. And so if we start asking the questions and questioning these, fake voters, fake ballots, fake counts, all of the things across all of the different domains of the election fraud machine, if we question those things and they fall apart, then they were fraudulent to begin with. And there is no universe in which I am still believing that this is all mismanagement and a whoopsie and we didn't know. The system, in my opinion, based on the information available, is designed for fraud. And it has been used to defraud. And the people who are the greatest champions and advocates of the system must know that.
So going to your point where you said, well, it's Colorado and it's the state of Colorado and Rubinstein could have lied under oath and everything else, yada, yada, yada. I got that. The federal government is the one that the accusation is being levied at. When Rubinstein says, I've never seen those and I got my stuff from the FBI, then the FBI needs to investigate. Did the FBI, and this is a hard pill for Kash Patel as the director to swallow, but he wasn't the director at the time. So this isn't going to fall on him. It might disparage the agency and make the agency look bad, but this is something that the FBI should investigate. Did they hand over that stuff to DA Rubinstein? And if they did, then Rubinstein needs to be charged for perjury and lying there and withholding evidence that was, exculpatory evidence. So this isn't, while I understand.
When was he questioned that he said he got it from the FBI and he didn't get it?
You did this to me last time and I found it and I played it for you. It's in the thing.
I'm just asking, was it in the trial or was it in a different hearing? Okay.
No, it was in the trial. Yeah. I think it was when they were, what do they call it? When they were asking him to verify the validity of the text messages.
Yeah. I don't believe any of these people. It's the same group of co-conspirators that overtly hid exculpatory evidence in my case. So when you say like, well, he was under oath, you think he lied under oath? Probably, maybe, possibly.
My point is that there's federal avenues for them to go after this and investigate this specific claim right here. And if we're as gung ho on getting Tina free and getting to the bottom of this, then that might require the FBI doing something that is very difficult for the FBI to do, and that is investigate themselves. And investigate Rubinstein, which could turn either on the FBI as the ones that deleted this or as Rubinstein, who did get it and did not hand it over in discovery.
So here's the thing is that, and this is, I'm going to go into like my most hopium position, which I think on this case, and the audience probably knows it because I think I've said it a few times now, but weaponization of government. Tina Peters is the poster child for weaponization of government. We just, watched that JD Vance clip in which he, got literally all of the facts wrong, but came to the right conclusion. She is victim of weaponization of government. We don't know yet what the conditions and application process and all of that is going to look like for making claims to that fund. Holly and I were talking about it yesterday, and I'm wondering, like, do you need a favorable court outcome before you can, make a claim on that? Do you need, like, what fact pattern do you need? What does the case have to look like before you can go after? And, you don't just get a payout from the 1776 fund. You get a formal apology potentially from the federal government, which sounds delightful. But that's so weaponization of government is not, they've set up the ability to get restitution for people to get restitution, for people to have remedy for the harm that was caused through that. That is not enough if we want this never to happen again. Right. If we want this never to happen again, there has to be accountability. And I have 3 children. And so when I think about this never happening again, I'm also aware of, the fourth turning and overruled and the long games that corrupted government actors play. And, in the fourth turning, we theorized that the past of Saculum was hijacked by globalist bad actors. So if we want this to never happen again for our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren, one, we're going to have to teach them to hold the line on liberty. And, life is much less comfortable than it was for us in the 80s and 90s growing up, where nobody was holding the line on liberty. Everybody was just having a good time. But we are going to have criminal charges. We're going to have a true accountability outcome for elections, certainly RICO, Russiagate, treasonous conspiracy, all those things, but specifically for the weaponization of government. And this goes to parents at school board meetings. It goes to people praying outside of abortion clinics. It goes to election integrity activists. It goes to people convicted of speech crimes for memes, right? And it might even go to Hunter Biden. It might even go to Hunter Biden, depending on whether or not the government, in their pursuit of a conviction, was protecting the rights of the accused consistent with the Constitution. Because in my opinion, if they were not protecting the rights of the accused consistent with the Constitution, but they decided that they had to have that conviction and used government power to achieve those ends, kind of like in Cash talks about in Government Gangsters, right? Some of the things that were done in those investigations. If that's the case, then there must be criminal charges and accountability. And it's not one person, because we're talking about a widespread set of, we're just talking about elections right now, but all those other social domains where conservative Trump supporters were accused of wrongthink and then dehumanized and demonized and detached from their rights, and the populace writ large justified atrocities against them because of the way in which they were prosecuted and the narratives that began in government and were propagated throughout the media apparatus. We have to be honest about that, and there has to be accountability for it, or it will happen again. And if it happens again, it's going to happen to your kids and your grandkids and their kids.
Found it.
I want to talk about the Exhibit A first. That's in front of you.
I don't have it in front of me. I know you're referencing the one that Mr. Wood testified that he was unclear about.
Yes, that's the one. That exhibit, you said you had never seen it prior to.
Correct.
And that exhibit contains conversations between who, from your recollection?
Sharona Bishop, Gerald Wood, Tina Peters, for starters.
And you had phone extractions from Gerald Wood's phone.
Yes.
You had phone extractions from Sharona Bishop's phone.
Correct.
And obviously, we did not have the phone that this was taken off of. You're able to tell that from your investigation, and which one was in blue?
Correct.
Okay. But two of the three participants in this conversation, we had their phones and got extractions from.
Correct.
Did you review all of the conversations between the parties as part of your investigation?
Yes.
How long have you been working on this investigation?
3 years as of, I think, today.
Was there actually those phones taken as not actually a state search warrant, but it was actually a federal search warrant, wasn't it?
Yes.
And they did the extractions first and reviewed it? Correct.
Yes.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
By the way, I said Rubinstein, I meant
actually those phones taken as not actually a state search warrant.
Rubinstein's the one asking the question.
And they did the extractions first and reviewed it? Correct.
Yes.
And as part of a process, because people might have attorneys, they go through and make sure that no privileged communications. So lots of people reviewed all the stuff before it got to us, right?
That's correct.
And they were told to, or you discussed with them to point out any relevant conversations between any of the parties?
That's correct.
And you also reviewed all relevant conversations between the parties as part of your investigation?
That's correct.
Does this chat appear on any of their phones?
No.
Allegedly.
Now there is another point that just dawned on me, and
You have a suggestion.
they mentioned that there's two people that they had their devices, Gerald Wood and Sharona Bishop, and it was not on either of their devices. There is that possibility that it was deleted from both of their devices, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, that was enough reasonable doubt to acquit on those charges. And that's one of the things that is important, I think, for folks to realize with this case. You never hear that Tina Peters was acquitted, right? Tina Peters was acquitted on 3 felonies. They all had to do with identity theft and the conspiracy to commit identity theft. And with that, like, my key takeaway from that, Brian, is that this you can tell from that exchange between Rubinstein and Cannon, this blindsided them. They weren't expecting to find those messages. They didn't know that they existed. And in that, they had to do cleanup. They had to do cleanup with the witness, James Cannon, and make it real clear for the record, hey, we didn't withhold these messages. We never got them. Promise, pinky swear, we totally never got them, right? That's what we're told is the story. The key takeaway for me is that where Tina Peters was able to enter in evidence that wasn't guardrailed and gate kept by the prosecution in her criminal trial,
It was damning.
it was enough to acquit on the charges, which explains, in my opinion, why the state and the prosecution were in lockstep to have this very narrowly focused. So the narrative broadly is that this is all about elections and threats to democracy and, election denialism and, stealing passwords, meddling in elections, tampering with elections. Somebody over the weekend posted on one of Jared Polis's posts that they had pardoned a J6er, that she was a J6er. Like the narrative about this is so convoluted and emotional and tied to this macro election narrative. The facts of the case were never about elections, and the prosecution and the court worked really hard to make sure that they never could be about elections. Anything that would have gone, kind of into that lane of talking about election fraud, talking about why she did what she did, what drove her to do it, what, all of those things, that was very carefully kept away from the jury. They were not allowed to see it. They were not allowed to analyze it. And then, of course, there is on the official misconduct misdemeanor, the fact that the state characterized her intent as, wanting internet fame, wanting celebrity. This is Jenna Griswold is sharing this message broadly, repeating the prosecution's theory of the case, that she wanted to be internet famous. They characterized her intent in that way to the jury, both I think during the trial in some of the questioning, but also in the jury instructions. And
that was the benefit.
That was the benefit harm theory. And she was never allowed to dispute it.
Right.
She was never allowed to say, actually, no. And we heard this in the appellate hearing, right? Judge Tao was like, you said to the jury that she did this for this reason. Why is it not okay for her to be able to say, no, I didn't actually, I did it for this other reason? And the answer to that is because if she was allowed to dispute their characterization of her intent, then we're now talking about the actual election fraud evidence in that courtroom. And they worked really hard to make sure that couldn't happen.
But the judge also made sure to bring it up during sentencing.
Exactly.
He used it against her, but would not let her defend her position on it. The other thing is Gerald Wood had qualified immunity, and he lied under oath.
He had conditional immunity.
Conditional, not qualified. Excuse me.
No, he was actually subject to prosecution if he lied under oath.
If he lied under oath, and he lied under oath.
Yeah.
He lied under oath.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think Judge Barrett is going to give him a lot of leeway, just like in my case with Judge Sweeney, where the witness for the plaintiffs lied on the stand. And after the fact, she's like, well, I don't think she had malice when she lied on the stand. It's like, well, that's cool. It was 2.5 years of my life, though. So thanks for letting that lie stand for so long and then saying, oh, whoops, no big deal. It's politicized justice.
So here's Blanche talking about Hunter.
And otherwise, there is no limitation. So whether you're Hunter Biden or whether you're another individual who believed they were a victim of weaponization, they can all apply to this fund. And again, it doesn't mean the commissioners will agree. It doesn't mean that they're getting $10 million or whatever was just read a few minutes ago. It just means that you can apply.
I wonder if I can apply. Does it have to be criminal prosecution, or can it be like the government?
No, I don't think it has to be criminal prosecution. I'm going to apply, and mine was civil prosecution, but it was civil prosecution that was a collaboration between the state government, the NGO, public-private partnership bullshit, and the federal government. And the federal government is important. I think it has to be federal for this, for you to be approved of this. You have to have a federal component. You can't just be persecuted by your state, right? There has to be something that the federal government did, because this is retribution or restitution for the federal weaponization. And in my case, the federal government entered the chat right as they were trying to beat a motion for summary judgment, and came in 2 days before that decision came down, put their thumb on the scale, and then doubled down in the appellate court. And that one was interesting because they doubled down in the appellate court, issued their statement of interest, suggesting that it be remanded back for another trial. And then the person that filed that quit the DOJ very shortly after that.
My point was, does it have to be like judicial proceedings? Does it have to be civil or criminal litigation? Or can it be the government colluding with social media platforms to censor people and kick them off of the platforms? Because this is my business. That's a financial burden that they And I'm being dead serious there. Like I'm
So like does Twitter files count if where the government is working with these private vendors? The private vendor themselves, Twitter, right? X has said that they were coerced by the government. They were pressured by the government to participate. Does the harm that derives from that qualify under this? I would think it should, but I don't know.
Does the Department of Homeland Security involvement with the Center for Internet Security and the Election Information Sharing and Analysis Center and their, election integrity partnership that went after us, like openly went after all of us. And there's hundreds of us. So that's why I don't think we'll get anything out of this. This will be more J6ers, Mark Houck, Tina Peters, Jeremy Brown.
Well, it's it's $1.7 billion, almost $1.8 billion. So there should be, the applications will probably be prioritized and those kinds of things in terms of what happens. But you know what is also interesting? Do you remember the movie Erin Brockovich?
Yeah, I do.
When you remember how when they go at the end, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, when they go at the end to give the check to the one family, and they're like giving them, over $1 million and whatnot, that fund was set up to deal with the outcomes of the settlement, right? All of those plaintiffs in that class action settling with all of them individually. I wonder if we're going to see something like that, some macro level legal action, or if it's truly just going to be like, I had this harm, here's my proof, I want an apology and a check. I don't know, but I think that there are some very egregious examples of weaponization of government. I think that Tina Peters is definitely up there. I've said for a long time, she's not a material witness to election fraud. And I know that pisses some people off. It's not a moral judgment. It's not saying that she wasn't justified in doing what she did. It wasn't saying any of those things. It's saying she doesn't have personal firsthand knowledge of election fraud that would be admissible in a court of law as testimony. She didn't take the images. She didn't analyze the images. She didn't write the report. She didn't peer review the report. She has no firsthand knowledge of the findings. Anything that she would say about the Mesa County reports would be hearsay. The people who could testify about that are the people who took the images, analyzed the images, wrote the report, peer reviewed the report. And even writing the report and peer reviewing the report still might be hearsay, right? So those are the rules. And it's why these emotional ideas that, there's a lot of idea fairies out there about how we can get to justice. I particularly want them to be consistent with the Constitution. And, the rules are, the authority to write the rules is given by the Constitution. So within the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure, it's important to realize what the art of the possible is and what is out of bounds. And people say, oh, no, just send the marshals in. Just send the marshals in and get her out. Well, is that the kind of government that you want to live under? Are you suggesting that we should give the government the power to just go in and, and do whatever it wants if it on paper under the Constitution doesn't have the authority to do that? I don't think so, but we'll see what happens.
All right, let's pause and take a moment to play everybody's favorite part of the show.
Today we remember those who gave everything. And memory is never still.
This Memorial Day! One hero, one mission to deliver softness to America!
No, Chi-Chi, we can't stop your snacks, dude. We have to deliver all of these soft disclosure gift cards.
He goes by Zach Kane.
The motion detector!
Hey, stop fighting over the beer brand.
Life finds a way.
Hydrate your elbows! Moisturize your soul!
Feel the rhythm together!
Hit it.
Excellent. Hydrate your all day. It'll be stuck in my head for the rest of the day.
It's been stuck in my head for the last 2 weeks. Softdisclosure.com, promo code Memorial15. Get you some. Support real America First businesses and American-owned businesses in the great state of Colorado and elsewhere, and get fantastic products. Christy's mom loves the product, by the way. I don't know.
Everybody loves the product because the product is awesome.
Yeah, but she's the real test.
I know.
She doesn't like lotion, and but she needs it, and so
yeah.
She says the scentless one is the best because she's not a big fan of crazy scents. So, and loved it. And I showed her the ad as well. And she's like, that's pretty crazy. And I was like, it's even funnier if you know Zach, and you don't know Zach yet, but maybe one day you'll get to meet Zach.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can meet Zach if you come to GART.
Yeah. I don't know that we're going to be seeing her parents at GART.
Well, other people could come to GART.
Yes, that's true. We want to talk about GART. There you go.
I mean, I was just trying to tee up.
I wasn't reading what you were putting down.
Oh, yeah. So June 25th through the 28th, Badlands Media is heading back to Deadwood, South Dakota for the 12th stop in the Great American Restoration Tour. Whether you're attending in person or virtually, a GART veteran or virgin, there's something for everyone. Early bird prices for virtual tickets are available through May 15th. Merch packages are also available now for both in-person and virtual ticket holders. Get your GART 12 tickets today at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And we're going to have a blast. I'm pumped. Are you pumped?
Yep, just bought my
Deadwood
plane
is,
tickets today.
Yeah, Deadwood is special.
Got my plane tickets all ready to go. Why can't I scroll? I can't scroll the thing on the side. What the heck? All right, that's weird. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the next story we want to talk about. And again, there's a lot that's been going on in the election integrity movement over the last 2 months, and you're seeing a lot of like opposition, I guess you would say. The opposition is getting a little bit nervous about things. And the Atlantic, of all places, put out a story this week. I think it was over the weekend. And this is how the story originally appeared in the Atlantic, and I thought it was hilarious. The election deniers are winning. That's how the story first appeared. It was since changed to the MAGA. Oh no, that's not it. Sorry. Although
that's quite the shift.
That's another story right there. Where? Oh crap! Where did it go? Hold on. They changed it to leave it to me to have all this time and all this stuff going on in the background, and I didn't. There we go. All right, now I got it. They changed it to MAGA is winning its war against American elections instead of election deniers.
No backsies, the Atlantic.
No
it is
backsies.
my favorite response meme. It is happening. I have the screen grab. You can't take it back.
We've got Yvonne Wingett Sanchez, Shane Harris, and Sarah Fitzpatrick as the writers. Shane Harris sounds familiar. I don't know who that is, but he sounds familiar. So does Sarah Fitzpatrick. Yvonne Wingett Sanchez, I found out, actually follows me on X, which means that she's been stalking election deniers and, for using us for our content and stuff, which ironically, she's never written anything about any of the claims that I've posted or anything. So I always take that as like a good sign, right? When they don't use your stuff, because that means that they can't debunk it and they don't want to bring any attention to it. But we put out an open invite for her to join the show and have not heard anything back. So let's get into it. Clay Parikh. I know that guy. We love Clay Parikh.
Yeah.
Clay Parikh, a cybersecurity expert.
I think you're sharing the wrong thing.
I am sharing the wrong thing. I've been sharing the wrong thing this whole time, and you just now told me. This is an A+ show, ladies and gentlemen.
It is an A+ show.
Hit the restart button. Let's do the whole show all over again. Hit the restart button.
Hit the like button if you're on my side.
Yes, hit the like button. Clay Parikh, a cybersecurity expert from Alabama, spent years as a bit player in the world of election denial. He gained a modest following by circulating conspiracy theories about President Trump's 2020 defeat, including that poll workers gave Trump supporters, but no other voters, felt tip markers to fill out their ballots, rendering them invalid and unreadable by the voting machines, which has, by the way, been proven true, by the way. Now, as far as the gave them to Trump supporters, but not other voters, this is based on the particular jurisdictions that they were in. It's not exactly like, hey, you're a Trump voter, here, take this felt pen. It's you're a 90% Republican district jurisdiction, here, you guys get these, or precinct, I should say. Yeah. He is now pushing debunked election claims. By the way, they completely forgot to talk about his background and like his actual resume and the fact that he worked for a VSTL, Voting Systems Test Lab, for 9.5 years, that he testified under oath in federal court, in federal depositions, in federal cases about this. He's an expert witness. He's been qualified as an expert witness in elections, and he's a certified hacker with a master's in computer science. Yeah, they completely make this guy just look like, oh, he's just a cybersecurity expert from Alabama with a little drawl.
Yeah.
He's now pushing debunked election claims from within the system he rails against as a special government employee in the Trump administration. The search warrant affidavit that allowed the FBI to seize election materials in Georgia in January, an extraordinary intervention by federal law enforcement, cited an analysis by Parikh. Last fall, Parikh began a contract with the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton's office, that made him a player in the state's process for certifying election equipment. And they knew that he can't talk about that, so they make sure to mention that. They know that he can't talk about Texas, and so they make it a point to bring that up because he can't defend any of the claims, that would be made against it. He boasts of access to the Wyoming Secretary of State, who he said on Rumble has invited him to participate in an online presentation with residents. Trump made Parikh internet famous when he reposted a video of the 63-year-old testifying in court that election equipment could be infiltrated remotely. They're not denying this, Ash. Like, they're not refuting this. How does that not shock you and concern you?
Yeah.
That he testified under oath in court. This was Harry McDougal's case. We had Harry on about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. How does that not bring up like, whoa, let's go back to this. Let's explain this here. No. Let's continue the hit piece.
Because this is about the narrative. This is about white knuckling the narrative of the big lie. The big lie is Trump's baseless, false accusations about this, conspiracies about the elections, and they're not true and they're unfounded. And also, there's experts that were hands-on keyboards at the voting system testing labs who have testified under oath. But that's not evidence. There's no evidence.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, by the way. And again, going back, Clay testified was deposed. I think he testified too. In the Ninth Circuit, in the Kerry Lake case, the civil case that was going on, this was years ago. He testified that he was able to hack almost every single machine in under 5 minutes. His quickest time was 2.5 minutes, and he was prevented by the company from going further into the system. They would not allow him to go because, as it says right on ProVNV's website, our duty, our obligation is to certify the machines to the satisfactory of the customer. Yeah. And who's the customer? Dominion, the voting machines. So Parikh is just one of many.
And the jurisdictions, because that whole ecosystem and the process that they go through, right? There's because it's the voting system testing lab reports go up through the local officials, and the certification is signed by government officials relying upon those reports. But yes, they are connected. They're in partnership and collaboration with the labs. So
Parikh is just one of many election deniers who were long relegated to the fringe and are now, with Trump back in office and still not over his electoral defeat 6 years ago, embedded inside the government. Another is attorney Kurt Olson, who was brought on last fall by Trump to investigate the 2020 election. Olson's work in the government, following years of pushing debunked or unsubstantiated theories, helped lead to the seizure of Georgia ballots. In Arizona, federal probes in the 2020 election by the FBI and the DHS are underway. Olson and other Trump administration officials have participated in extensive meetings about U.S. elections with senior members of the Justice Department in recent months. 4 people familiar with the meetings have told us. In a statement, a DOJ spokesperson said, quote, "The Justice Department is committed to upholding the integrity of our electoral system and continue to prioritize efforts to ensure all elections remain free, fair, and transparent." They never have been. So just to throw that out there.
Yeah. I mean, not elections since Hava, certainly. There might have been one legitimate election, before the 2000 election. But I also kind of struggle with that because in my trial brief, I laid out going back to 1800 and the election of Thomas Jefferson, which was decided by the House of Representatives, that every single election has had at least at a minimum allegations and real malfeasance. When we think about the Civil War elections, the Reconstruction elections, so it's real hard for me to believe that there are real ones.
Even when we covered the James Collier interview, and he goes back to the 1970s and 80s, and he's going through counting rooms where League of Women Voters, one of the familiar players in the NGO world, is there on the floor counting these votes and a lot of shady things. Now, granted, that video is from the 70s and 80s, and it's very grainy and it's difficult to see exactly what's going on. But based on the allegations that Collier makes in those interviews and those, what he's talked about, this has been a problem that's been going on for at least 40 or 50 years, at least. And again, like you said, it goes even further back. I think the Hava just kind of made it a little more easy for them to do because you introduce the technology. And as long as you can keep any transparency from the technology itself, the proprietary software, you're able to obscure the elections and manipulate them in any way you'd see fit.
Yes, I would voice it a little stronger, right? I think that Hava was a transformation.
Yeah,
Hava gave birth to the industry. It grew rapidly. It put new players and new incentive structures in place, and I think that all happened by design. And my theory is I believe that the hanging chads were the paper, and it was done by design to create the need for Hava, which was ready to go.
The president signed an executive order on March 31st that attempts to change the rules of mail-in voting, and his allies in Congress are endeavoring to reshape elections ahead of the midterms this fall, spending weeks debating a voter ID bill that is almost certainly doomed. In April, the Justice Department demanded that officials in Wayne County, Michigan, turn over ballots from the 2024 election. But wait, I thought Trump was only concerned about his loss 6 years ago. That's what they just said. He hasn't gotten over that. But here we are still looking at current elections as well. Quote, there, by the way, he won Michigan in 2024, but here we are looking at it still. Quote, there are some of us election deniers that are supporting the federal government, and things are changing. Parikh, one of the people who helped Olson successfully challenge the system in Arizona years ago, said on Rumble Show, though he said the team he is working with was smaller than he'd like, he said it was still filled with quote unquote quality people who care about quote unquote fixing elections. Shortly before the Georgia affidavit became public, Parikh told us he wouldn't get into the details of his work for the federal government. In a phone call, he said he would like voting equipment in all 50 states investigated, but told us sternly and loudly that he could neither, quote unquote, confirm nor deny neither the details of his government work. Yet in an interview with Talking Points memo after the Georgia affidavit was unsealed, Parikh warned of a quote unquote cabal that is compromising elections and compared himself to the Ron Swanson from the sitcom Parks and Recreation character, a character who despises the very government that he serves, quote, working for the government but hating them every bit, right? He told the news outlet, that guy's my hero. So many people are pressing debunked and unsubstantiated election theories from within the government that their presence has become a feature of the system. They range from those with immense power, including the president, all the way down to local officials. Others are investigating them. In Riverside County, California, Sheriff Chad Bianco, a Republican who is running for governor, seized about 650,000 ballots and other election materials in March after local activists alleged malfeasance when California voters last year overwhelmingly approved a ballot measure to redraw the state's congressional map in favor of Democrats. Bianco told us the activists within a group, with a citizen group known as the Riverside Election Integrity Team, had complained to his office that the number of ballots counted by election officials exceeded the number of votes cast. Quote, "There's obviously something wrong with the machines," he recalled activists claiming, citing their own research, "because we didn't have that many ballots," end quote. County election officials explained that the activists were relying on imprecise data, but Bianco was determined to find out for himself. Quote, "The intent of the investigation is to count the ballots and see how many there are," he told us in a video interview. When we asked what steps his investigation took to assess the validity of the activist claims, the sheriff grew exasperated. "There's no steps to determine the validity," he said. "The validity is the records." He brushed aside criticism from Democratic Attorney General Rob Bonta, who went to court to try to stop the probe. And
Why?
Bianco, exactly.
Why? If there's no validity to the claims, and that question is stupid, right? The activists have brought me these claims. The authorities say that, the election authorities say that there's no validity to the claims. So I'm going to find out by myself and check the records. I'm going to find out for myself, check the records, and confirm the validity of the claims. Well, how did you assess the validity of the claims before you did that? Well, right. I'm doing it to assess the validity of the claims.
That's where they stop.
I would be exasperated too, is what I'm saying.
That's where they stop you and tell you to trust the authoritative sources.
Yeah, oh yeah. The Secretary of State said, my Secretary of State is Jenna Griswold.
I think they actually use that same language. It says, and Bianco dismissed alarm among election experts who said that his moves could deepen public mistrust in the democratic process. Imagine being an election expert, calling yourself an election expert, and telling a sheriff that you can't investigate this because you would lead to mistrust in the process. That would be like being a detective and going to a murder scene and saying, don't look at anything in the crime scene because you might make people think that somebody's a murderer. That's nuts. Yeah. That's crazy that the Atlantic would take that position. I mean, well, it's not crazy.
It's not at all crazy. This is, but it should be encouraging to everyone, because it is the absolute state of the narrative.
If anybody objectively read this and actually thought about how the Atlantic is spinning this narrative and sat there and said, wait, hold on. So you have a sheriff that's taking a legitimate concern and he's just counting the ballots. That's it. He's just counting 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 650,000. And you guys are fighting tooth and nail to stop that, going all the way to the California Supreme Court. And then you have election experts that are saying, don't do this. You're going to create distrust in the democratic process. I'd be like, yeah, maybe you should do this. Let's find out once and for all. Let's find out.
Yeah.
An investigation increases their confidence, the sheriff told us. Soon after, the California Supreme Court ordered the sheriff to pause his investigation and preserve the seized material while it reviews the case. Undeterred, the Riverside Election Integrity Team is working with activists from at least half a dozen California counties to help them get records from the county officials to review the outcome of last year's redistricting referendum. Greg Langworthy, who calls himself the de facto leader of the group, told us his group intends to scrutinize similar records after the midterm elections, before the results are certified, a process that can take California weeks. At the federal level, one main focus appears to be proving foreign interference, which election deniers have floated as a possible justification. I don't want to get into all that, the foreign interference. We can land that there.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the foreign interference because I think that's a narrative that they want to seed because they want everybody to focus on the Venezuela story. And I'm not there, still not there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that there's foreign interference in our elections, but I don't think it is detached from the election, the U.S. American election theft, manipulation, rigging. Right. And so yes, there are foreign components, but those foreign, it's treason. And it's giving aid and comfort to America's enemies. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt that Venezuela is some sort of mastermind calling the shots on U.S. election outcomes. They still require Americans to do it. And the priority for prosecution should still be the Americans, because they're the ones, given the public trust. The people that are in those statutory positions, whether bureaucratic or elected, those people swear an oath and they have a duty to preserve and protect public trust. If they fail to do that, if they act in collaboration with foreign actors to destabilize America, they are guilty of treason. And that should be the priority, not getting everybody to look at Venezuela and then start, calling on the name of the patron saint, Maria Corina Machado.
Hakuna Matata.
Hashtag globalism.
Yes. Okay. Let's get into let's get into Todd, Blanche on Maria Bartiromo. I teased this on Badlands Daily that we're going to play this whole thing on Why We Vote.
So we just laid out the last 10 years. You heard the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee saying that there has been a conspiracy over 10 years. What have you done about it?
Well, look, that's exactly what we're investigating right now. And by the way, what is not in dispute is that the whole Russia hoax, there was absolutely nothing to it. And so the question that the American people have to ask is, well, then why did they do it? Why did Comey say what he said? Why did the outgoing Obama administration do what they did? And that's what we're studying right now, because it did great damage to this country. It did great damage to President Trump's first term. And we want to understand why that happened, why there continued to be an effort by operatives in the government to go after President Trump while he was in office, and then, of course, over the past several years as well.
Do you believe it was a conspiracy against President Trump?
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're looking at. And do you believe it? I mean, look at what happened. I mean, here, there's no evidence of any Russia collusion at all. And yet there was a special counsel appointed, 2 years, the president's family, his entire administration was investigated. There was zero evidence of any Russia collusion. Right. That cannot happen. And so it should never happen in this country. And so we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Oh, I understand that. And we all know, this audience is well aware of it. We were among the first to say this doesn't smell right. This doesn't look right. We don't think it's true. I had Devin Nunes on and John Ratcliffe on virtually every week back in 2017 and 2018 saying just that, all of their findings. I'd like to know why it's taking so long. I mean, has the statute of limitations run up? Do you have no more wiggle room in terms of zeroing in on things like the Mueller report, the Nunes report, and all the evidence that was clear that they knew that there was no Russia collusion?
Look, I don't know that the statute has run out. I don't think so, because what you saw a continued effort all the way up until very recently, up until the raid of Mar-a-Lago just a couple of years ago, a continued effort to destroy President Trump. And whether that's one conspiracy that continued from 2015, 2016, all the way up to 2023 is what we're looking at right now. But the way that we do that is with the grand jury process. So it's calling witnesses, it's looking at documents, it's having prosecutors study, it's having the FBI look at it and investigate what happened. And we're finding out some incredibly troubling things, and at some point at the right time that will be made public, and the American people will see exactly what happened to this administration and President Trump over the past decade.
Well, I mean, the country was ripped apart. We all know that. Half of the country said he colluded with Russia. The other half said, no, it didn't. I mean, it ripped the country apart. But you say when the time is right. When is the time right? When should we expect these charges of conspiracy?
Well, I mean, look, as has been publicly reported, the Southern District of Florida has an open criminal investigation. That involves hundreds of subpoenas. It involves hundreds of witnesses. And so as far as timing and when we can expect it, we are working hard and we are working efficiently, but we are going to do it right. We are not going to rush something that isn't ready. We're not going to reach a conclusion before our investigation is over. But I assure you, and I assure the American people, that we are completely focused on it.
Okay. Well, I don't know what is not ready. I mean, we've been watching this play out for a long time, and viewers and people watching are frustrated because it just keeps happening. Weaponization keeps happening because it's not corrected the time before. Now, there are charges against.
So let's pause that there for a second, because Bartiromo's getting a little bit, she's asking questions, but at the same time, she's expressing a lot of angst. She's
frustration. I would describe that as, yeah.
Yeah.
And channeling her audience, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting them fired up. Yeah, that's a great point. We've been hearing about this for a long time. The Russiagate, the collusion, the grand jury down in Florida. Where are we going with this? When are we going to see some results? And I agree, there is a lot of people. By the way, what was my timeline? Right after the 2026 midterms. So we'll see. We got to get something on the election before then. But all of this, the Grand Rico, comes after the 2026 midterms. Right after, like a month. So All right, we can keep going with this. I just want to pause there just to.
I mean, I'm encouraged by the stuff we're seeing before July 4th, 2026.
Oh yeah.
And I think we still have, however many days that is until we still have a couple months, less than a couple months.
Month and a half.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna see more stuff.
I did. Gas $2.40 a gallon.
I
Tell me
love
right
that.
now,
And hope
they're
you're right.
threatening the president, transmitting a threat across state lines because of that Instagram post 8647. I mean, is that real or is that a placeholder or what? What exactly is the charge? Because he's saying this has no merit.
Well, I mean, he's entitled to say whatever he wants. What the facts show is that a grand jury, this isn't a D.C. grand jury. This isn't Todd Blanche, former President Trump's personal attorney, bringing charges. These are line prosecutors, career prosecutors in North Carolina who investigated what happened, investigated this case for nearly a year, and a grand jury returned an indictment. There is nothing more serious in this country, as we've seen repeatedly over the past several years, than threatening President Trump. He has been, on multiple occasions, 3 occasions at least, someone has tried to kill him, okay? So we have to take these threats seriously, and obviously Comey's entitled to his day in court. He is a defendant. He's charged in an indictment out of North Carolina, and those charges are very serious.
Well, obviously, when you see someone like Jim Comey, who was the head of the FBI, write out 8647 on the street, I mean, on the beach, rather, someone who might be mentally challenged is going to use that and say, well, let me go do what Comey just told me to do. But I've got to move on because recently Susie Wiles.
All right, so we can just briefly land that there and talk about that.
Yeah.
So have you listened to Comey over the last couple weeks?
Mm-mm.
Or a couple days, I should say. So
No, I've been pretty buried with the Tina Peters stuff.
So Comey has come out and he's been like, hey, DOJ, all of our allies in the CIA, the FBI. Well, Brennan said the CIA, but Comey says, I've been talking to people in the FBI and telling them, they're scared. They don't know what's going to happen and they need to stay the line and just hold their ground for 2.5 more years. Like he's saying a lot of things that are, I don't know. They're not things that you would say when you're under a very serious indictment. It's kind of like stuff that would be used against you potentially, I guess.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And then with him and Brennan and of course the Jim Erdman, the CIA guy that testified last week, it's like they're all telling you, hey guys, yeah, the deep state's absolutely real. Just got to hold on and Trump will be out of there in 2.5 years and just hang on till then. I'm not saying Erdman's saying that. Erdman is exposing, the subordination. But yeah, insubordination, excuse me, insubordination, excuse me. All right, now we get into the 2020 part.
This is the good stuff.
This is the good stuff.
The president's chief of staff made an interesting comment that a lot of our audience was perked up about. And here's what she said. Watch this.
We had a lovely dinner, and at the end of it, he wanted to know why he won Florida, but maybe struggled in some other states that I think we're going to find out he actually did win. But I wrote like an after action report, gave it to him to read.
So she just said that we're going to find out that President Trump actually did win certain states in the 2020 election. Now, the president says all the time that the election was rigged. What have you done about that? Do you have any evidence that the election was rigged? What can you tell us?
Well, there's a ton of evidence that the election was rigged. That's not something the DOJ needs to tell you about. There's been evidence about that for many, many years. What I can tell you is that we have multiple investigations going on in Arizona, in Georgia, in Fulton County, Georgia, and that's exactly what we're looking at. By the way, this is very difficult because they're very good. They're very good at hiding up misconduct and hiding what they're doing. And so that's why we're very focused on finding out whether the right people voted, whether people who were supposed to vote voted, whether there was one vote cast per voter. And that's what we're doing in multiple states. And I expect, and again, people, you'll say to me, how long has it taken? Why is it taking so long? And the reality, the answer to that is because it takes a lot of work to uncover what happened in 2020. It takes a lot of old, good old-fashioned law enforcement police work, which is what we're doing. And we have great prosecutors working on it as well. And I expect that, and I assure the American people that as soon as we have something to say for it, whether it's charges, whether it's a report, whether it's the results of an investigation, the American people will learn about what we've uncovered.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is that you have in fact seen evidence that people voted who should not have voted, whether it be through mail-in ballots, ballots coming from empty parking lots or dead people, whatever, or from illegals. Is that what you're suggesting?
Maria, during the Biden administration, they didn't charge a single individual with illegally voting. Just last year, we charged dozens, and we're investigating a ton more. And so that's exactly what I'm saying. We know that there were people who voted who were not eligible to vote. We've charged some of them. We've charged some of them in the past year. We're investigating a ton more right now. And so that's the tip of the iceberg of what we're doing.
Okay.
But yes, I can flat out say, because of that yes, that happened.
All right. So you believe there will be at some point a definitive answer to whether or not the 2020 election was stolen?
I'm not going to promise there's going to be a definitive answer. That wouldn't be fair to you or anybody else, but we are looking at it and we're hoping to get one.
And then didn't he go on to say they're going to make sure that the American people know what and so I had this in the brief this morning. It was a part of that. Maybe it was more in the middle and I missed it when we just played that. But that he said whether it charges or a report or the findings.
He said that. He
said that. Yeah.
Well,
so two things that I have in response to that clip, and then we can wrap up. One is that it sounds like he's talking about voter fraud as opposed to election fraud. And that's disheartening. However, Susie Wiles is talking about he won other states. So I said in the brief, like, it gives me pause that the tactics he's talking about are tactics of voter fraud as opposed to systemic election fraud. However, if we're talking about overturning, state, it's being significant enough for states to be overturned. If we're talking about Fulton County, if we're talking about Maricopa County, there was voter fraud, but the voter fraud was in service of the election fraud, and you can't detach the two things. So it gives me a little bit of pause, but it doesn't give me a ton of pause. The part that makes me just want to rip my hair out of my head is, well, we might have a report with some findings, Brian. No
more reports. No more
indictments, and we need real accountability. We cannot have real elections until we're honest about how fake they are. I'll land it there.
Not reports, not civil lawsuits, not what indictments.
Oh, the statute is up. Come on, guys, that was 6 years ago.
Yep. So it's funny because your take right there on the voter fraud versus election fraud was almost my exact take on Monday, and that did not sit well with our audience on Badlands Daily, but it's exactly right. And when you've been doing the election thing as long as you and I have, you hear somebody talking like that, and those are like 2020 talking points, from a lot of the attorneys that didn't actually want to get into the meat and potatoes of the election fraud. They didn't want to get into the thick of it, and they just wanted to, find enough votes to get them over the top, right? Like that kind of thing. No, we're trying to fix a systemic problem,
correct, in
our elections. And again, to be fair, and Zach brought me back in on this point, Blanche isn't going to be out there and be like, yeah, well, the Dominion machines are, the black box voting machines in Texas. He's not going to go down that route. But I think it does exist, and the investigations into it will at least lead to that. A lot of the stuff that they'll find in Georgia is going to lead investigators to say, wait, this isn't right. How did they do this? And then from there, you're going to go, and this is a long process. And I'm hoping, and again, I'm hoping the right people are listening, and I know that the right people were involved in this, but I'm hoping that the investigators are good enough to know that what they don't know, and be willing to reach out to the people that have been investigating this for 6 years and ask them, hey, what does this mean? Can you point me in a direction to how this can happen? Because I can't tell you, Ash, how many times I talk to people in government that are supposed to be knowledgeable people, and I tell them about certain things, and they're like, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, you've never heard of that before because you haven't been doing this for 6 years, like you and I have, like Kevin has, like David Cross has, like Garland Favorito has, like, like all of these people have, so I'm microdosing on hopium.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with all of that. The one thing that I would say is, I'm pretty optimistic that they are leveraging all of the research and the things that have been done. Again, Kurt Olson is a special government employee working on elections inside the Trump administration. And if anybody has the full spectrum of election fraud evidence, et cetera, across the country, it's Kurt Olson. I also think that as much as people are irritated and want things to move faster, the scope and scale of this investigation and ostensibly, hopefully, prosecution, he does say in that, we have the best prosecutors on this, right? So it is, as much as people want that to move quickly, that has to follow our rules. It has to follow, because we're talking about protecting the rights of the accused, and the people that engaged in election fraud have the same rights of the accused as the people who were accused of being election deniers, right? We can't equivocate on that, because as soon as we do, it'll be used against us. So with that in mind, timing and how long this is moving rapidly, and
Yes.
that gives me a lot of confidence that they are leveraging all of that work.
Yes. All right. So real quick, as we get out of here, there's been a lot of talk about Georgia having this secret bunker where they're going to be counting votes. That got shut down. They have to allow access now. It's not going to be
news.
That is good news. That is very good news. And also, I don't know if you remember me talking about the Callais decision and how significant this was going to be, not mainly for the House, but for the states. Stacy Abrams was melting down about this.
Stacy, could you talk a little bit about how this ruling will affect Black representation, not only at the federal level, but at the state level? I'm thinking state lawmakers, county commissions, city councils. To what extent will this ruling affect representation and the representation, particularly of voters of color, at the levels below the federal level?
Absolutely. And that's why I think this is such an important conversation to have at this moment. In a competitive authoritarian nation, which is what America is now, democracy is about ensuring that we have shared power and shared voices. It does not guarantee you victory, but it guarantees you access. Authoritarianism, especially competitive authoritarianism, attempts to diminish your ability to use those same democratic institutions to your benefit. With these new maps, we know that analysis by Fair Fight and Black Voters Matter show that we could lose 19 to 20 congressional seats, but we could lose up to 191 state legislative seats. And in the South, those state legislators draw city council districts, county commission districts, school board districts, and they draw state legislative lines. And so if you want to know if your child is going to have fair and equitable access to education, that will be diminished if your families can't participate in elections and elect leaders who value your education.
How can't they participate in elections?
Yeah, I know that's so retarded, but that's exactly what I've been
saying. Your kids aren't going to get an education because of the way that districts are being drawn, and that means you're not going to be able to. If you don't like the bitch, I live in Colorado. If you don't like the outcome, it means you don't have fair and equitable access to democracy. Can I make that case?
You look way too deep into her opinion on the matter and not just what's actually going to happen. Like when she says authoritarianism, that's just a way for her to say we lost, and so the other side's getting their way, because everything that's going on right now we voted for. And so you call it authoritarianism. We call it exactly what we voted for: the deportations, the tariffs. We voted for that. That was the platform. But the 190 legislatures, that's something I said right off the rip. I said, this is great for the GOP representation in the House, but this is going to reshape the state legislatures across the country. And, redrawing districts for city councils and everything else. When Memphis, you're sitting here looking at Steve Cohen get knocked out and watching him cry to Chris Cuomo about being knocked out and having to drop out of the race. But think about what's going to happen when Memphis redraws their city council line with their state legislature there with even more support, and are able to get conservative representation in there and start bringing in policing efforts and start cleaning up the welfare dependency, hopefully. And again, this is a bit of a pipe dream, but you could see over the next, 8 years or so, you could see a city like Memphis starting to turn around bigly. So
yeah,
let's go. All right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Hydrate your elbows, moisturize your soul.
soul.
Softdisclosure.com, Memorial 15. Head to badlandsmedia.tv/events and get your GART tickets and come hang out with us virtually or in person. And vote harder and hit the like.
Hit the like. If there's any rants that we didn't get to, we will hit them on the next show. And I'm just checking real quick to make sure that there were no Badlands boosts. So we are all good to get out of here.
Right on.
And I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.